Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at the spot, the place, where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney. How are you, Brains? I hope you are reaching your highest and greatest good, because I'm about to take you there. We are about to go on the cycle breaker pathway with Kathi Sohn. What is this all about? We're about to find out. She is really focusing on working with moms that need a breakthrough. You know, these kids will wear you out. But also, what is the relationship between mothers, daughters, mothers and sons, and the mother-father relationship? What are women holding down? Why are we playing small? Why are we being suppressed? Kathi is going to take us through this cycle breakaway and kind of help us discover and discover and uncover who we are. And beyond that, we're going to talk a little bit about her book. So let's welcome her to the show. How are you, Kathi?
I'm doing great today, April. So good to be here with you.
I'm happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about what cycle breaker pathway is and how you show up in the world.
Yes, well, Cycle Breaker Pathways is actually a relatively recent creation of mine, based on the original work of my late husband, David Sohn, who created the body memory process in the late 80s. And in a nutshell, his work was to help people discover and then release the beliefs that we create about ourselves before we're even 7 years old, right? About the
Wow.
world, about others, and about life. And Cycle Breaker Pathways is my application of that work to help moms of teens and tweens, and even moms of younger kids who will be teens one day, because this work with beliefs is so relevant to the triggers that moms find themselves facing and the patterns as they seek to connect with their kids and be the role model and the mentor that they long to be.
Well, you can only do better if you know better. And we know when we get to a certain age, right from wrong. And we cannot continue to blame mama, Aunt Martha, grandma, because it's epigenetic. It's generational trauma and it's patterns. You know, you cook the fried chicken a certain kind of way because grandma did it. You prepare the table a certain kind of way because mama did it. You wash the clothes a certain kind of way because you saw your aunt do it. So this is groundbreaking. This is revolutionary what you're doing, because you're saying, hey, look, pump the brakes. Let's look under the hood and see really what's going on and how can we change the mechanics. Do I have that right?
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So now tell us a little bit about David.
Oh, I love to talk about David. So he was on a quest for wellness, and it all started with him being literally like deathly ill when he was 14 years old. He actually was pronounced dead for a certain period of time. I mean, everybody thought he was gone. And then his dad noticed something on one of the monitors and he came back. He had a near death experience.
Hmm.
And what was going on for him was he had double staph pneumonia, which in the day, this was back in the early 60s, and it was something that they didn't know how to treat. There were some experimental drugs, but it was just really bad, really attacked the lungs. And David had a few consequences from the disease. Even though he came back, he did have problems with his lungs. We all have this cilia in our lungs, it's little hairs that help to keep things cleared out, but they were all because of the disease, they were destroyed essentially. So he had to cough every now and then to keep things moving. And he said that whenever he went to the doctor and they listened to his lungs, or if he had a chest x-ray, they'd want to throw him immediately into intensive care.
Mm.
But he, he just really, he didn't buy into you're not going to have a long or productive life. It was just the opposite for him. And in fact, not only was he active and he enjoyed great health other than needing to cough, right? To move, to sort of mechanically do what our lungs do for themselves. He decided that because the doctors were telling him he'd never really be well, he was on a quest for what is wellness. And this was in the 80s, before wellness was such a topic as it is now. You can go online and you can see pillars of wellness from a lot of different perspectives. But back then, it really wasn't such a topic, even though there were a lot of training starting to come up. There was a sort of revival of the human potential movement, workshops like EST and LifeSpring that he participated in because at the same time, he had a sense of wanting to always find the deeper meaning in his own life. He wanted to work on himself. And so he set out to research. He read a lot of books. He traveled to the Far East. He took all of these trainings. And there were a couple of research projects going on around this time that also contributed to him pulling together the work. One of them about the consciousness of babies in the womb that we didn't realize before. So you think about traditional birthing practices, the delivery rooms are actually to accommodate, the temperature is to accommodate the doctors, right? The big bright lights, but the baby
It's
was
traumatic.
not really considered, right? That in itself is traumatic.
Traumatic.
So Dr. David Chamberlain and Dr. Thomas Burney and people like that were starting to write books about there's the secret of your unborn baby and other books, Babies Who Remember Birth, about birth trauma. They were also starting to uncover the connection between the baby and the mom being deeper, especially on an emotional level, than they ever realized before. And this, because of the neurotransmitters that cross the placenta, right? So if mom's anxious and upset, it isn't mom anxious and upset a lot of times when she's pregnant, especially for the first time, right?
You know what somebody told me? Somebody told me, he says, it is traumatic. You are entering into the world in between defecation, urination, and a puddle of blood and slime. And as soon as you arrive, you are subjected to corporal punishment.
Oh
Someone
yeah,
slapping your foot
but
or slapping your butt, the bright lights, sucking mucus out of your nose. That's a lot. But they have given a party for you. There's a lot of gifts, there's a lot of hugs and kisses after that. But
yeah,
that process alone. So we think about young mothers, we think about single mothers, we think about unplanned pregnancies, we think about stress. This is really horrible for me to say, but my niece used to hit her belly.
oh my goodness,
She was from another scene, but
yeah,
even regardless, and I was like, okay, so how is this baby going to react?
yeah,
And then when they come out, if they were not well received, I remember, me and my husband rubbing the baby with oil, talking to him, putting the headsets, listening to jazz, doing anything I could do to, pass gas, whatever it was. So I can definitely see the difference. And it is, they say, from the womb to the tomb.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was just dawning upon us, right? And even now, it's not widely understood, right, or recognized. But it's starting to happen certainly a lot more than it did in the past. And one other piece of research I want to mention here was by Dr. Candace Pert, who wrote Molecules of Emotion. And back in the late 80s, they were, or maybe even a little bit earlier than that, they were researching at the National Institute of Mental Health for the opiate receptor in the body. They figured that if drugs worked in the body, there must be a reason why, sort of like a lock and key, right? and they actually did find this receptor. And as a consequence, they found that there are receptors in the body for neurotransmitters that travel from the brain. So during emotional events, when we release a lot of these neurotransmitters, the traumatic experience absolutely becomes a physical phenomenon as well. And then through this piece of research, Dr. Pert was the first scientist to prove the mind-body connection. So big, huge things happening. And because David was so clued in, because he wanted to me, he was looking for stuff like this, because he was looking at wellness, that he pulled together the body memory process based upon the fact that babies are conscious in the womb. They don't have language. They don't have the sophisticated, like the thought processes, but it's all on this really physiological neurotransmitter receptor level. It's on this energy level. And he pulled the work together based on that consciousness about the connection with that Dr. Pert discovered, and the power of belief, right, which has been with us through the wisdom of the ages in religions, and we even scientists generally just accept that beliefs are powerful. And so it's the work is about explaining to people that we make up these beliefs. And by the way, between the time in the womb, and yes, it does happen then, even as early as conception, there is work out there about that. And it's sort of a binary thing at conception.
Yeah, I mean,
either mom,
they say as soon as the sperm and the over the egg meet, a heartbeat occurs. But what if that was a traumatic experience? What if that was rape? What if that was incest? What if that was mad passion? Sometimes it's mad passion and you got triplets in there. So, again, I understand that from inception. I believe that. I do.
And here's another piece. Yes. And then let's layer on another piece. And that's when mom discovers she's pregnant. That is a defining moment. And when you think about it, it's a binary thing. Either she's thrilled because she really wants to be a mom, or she's not real thrilled, or maybe she's even upset because it wasn't planned, right? And what am I going to do now? All the way to, oh my God, what am I going to do now, right? And so the baby picks this up as rejection. Either I'm accepted or I'm rejection. So there's a whole bunch of let's just say baggage that even the adult has carried throughout their whole lifetime based upon acceptance or rejection. That's just one layer.
Right. And the thing is your physical condition. What is the body prepared for that? But let's take it somewhere way out, because I like to go way out on my show. Birthing is different now. It's done outside of the womb. The conception is done outside of the womb. You have in vitro, you have surrogates, you have someone else carrying your baby. I believe, I'm not a doctor, here's a disclaimer, I believe that has something to do with it too.
Yes,
I really do. My niece would let someone else nurse her baby.
Yeah.
I was confused with that. I was like, that's their DNA. That's their, their abuse of
the emotional connection.
It's all of that. But she said, I just didn't produce enough milk and I want them to have breast milk. And, I get all of that. But all of this is different. And underwater birthing, hypnobirthing, all of this is so different. Yes. So it is a different connection. And I was reading an article the other day. You may have siblings and live in the same household, but you have three different individuals with three different parents, because you're received different, you respond different, you react different, your birthing was different, you're a different person. Everyone can't be the same thing and have the same relationship.
And I grew up, I was adopted, and my brothers were adopted too. All three of us were from different families.
Oh,
And
wow. Now,
yes, and I also have the experience from my perspective as a mom because I did do IVF. I have two children that are from two fresh cycles, IVF cycles. There's long stories associated, but the bottom line is I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's just added, complexity. So
right,
when the adult decides I want to work through all of this, they need to address all of it. It's not just, one mom, right? It's not just my adoptive mom. It's what was going on with my birth mom as
right,
well,
right,
for
right, right,
example.
right, right. I had another guest on my show that was born to a unwed mother at 14 years old, and they took her immediately from the mother. Mother
Mhm.
never seen her, never nurtured her. She said the only nurturing that she got was someone to put a bottle in her mouth. They didn't
Mhm.
swaddle her, and she has had trauma her entire life because of that. She said she just, would have these memories, and, she did some shadow work and some inner child work, and all of these start to suffer. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do specifically with moms.
Yes. So just to give a little backstory of myself, of where I came to actually be doing this work myself,
Mhm.
because I didn't start out this way. So I was married to David for 25 years. Again, this is the man we were just talking about who created this work called the body memory process. When he and I met, I was working for the Department of Defense, which I retired from in 2020 after 36 years, including some time in the military. So I learned this work very, very deeply with David because I used it to heal a lot of my own stuff. So I have a little story on myself. And when I lost David in 2019, just before the pandemic, I got on the other side of the pandemic because I needed to retire, and I was on assignment in Hawaii, and I knew I wanted to move to the mainland. So all of that happened. And I always knew that I wanted to one day when I retired, because I knew the work so well and I believe in it so much because it has helped me so much, that I wanted to apply this work to mitigating generational trauma because I had it in my own family. And if I could just tell a quick story right here about how all this became clear to me. So, when I was in my early 30s, I was on a phone call with my brother Mike. This is my oldest brother. And it came up in conversation. There was a prompt for my brother to say, "What are you talking about? We're all adopted." I
Mm.
didn't know. I didn't know. I was in my 30s. I had no concept of it.
Wow.
And at the time, I had I had realized that I was struggling with some things like confrontation and having hard conversations, which is important to this story. So this is with some anxiety that I had that I was dealing with. And in the context of having this information, like knowing this, and then like, I need to talk to mom, but not knowing how to talk to mom. So I struggled for a couple of years. It was almost 2 years before I found the courage to just bring the topic up with my mom.
Wow.
Now, you're not going to believe this. So here's the sort of like the Casey case and rest of the story. What she said, when all of you were 7 years old, I told you, I had you read a book called The Chosen Baby. Well, I remember the book, but I never got that it was about me. It was a book about an adopted baby. And she said that when you were 13, you said something that made me realize you didn't know. And then I had no idea how to bring this up with you. Like, what do I do now? And she, for 20 years, between the time she knew I didn't know and pretty much when I learned about it, 20 years had gone by, she still hadn't brought the subject up with me. Well, I experienced that same phenomenon myself for 2 years. And when she told me what she was going through, it was an epiphany that she had been caught in a cycle of trauma.
Wow.
And I had been handed that like an emotional inheritance,
Mm, mm,
April. And I decided right then and there that I was not going to pass that on to my children if I ever had children, which I ended up, having. I have two
right.
kids. So the reason why I'm working with moms, and specifically moms of teens right now, because I think that moms of teens really do need help. And teens are at an age where they can do their own deep self-awareness, which really can serve them well in terms of developing resilience and to head off a lot of problems adults experience because they haven't done the deep inner work, right? And so the work that I do with moms is to do essentially the body memory process type of work on themselves to get to the cause behind the emotional triggers they experience, right? The patterns that they're like, why am I doing this again? I said I never would, and here I am doing it again. That they can work on themselves. They can be a role model in their family, right? They learn to emotionally sort of reconnect with their kids, and being that role model goes a long step in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But there's specific work that they can do on that, and then they help their teens do that deep self-awareness, all the while, deepening that bond, and mom moving from role model into mentor. And then she moves into like another level of role model when at the end of my program she sort of takes a look at what's her next dream. So a lot of moms have started out maybe very early in, like very, very young adult, maybe never had the time to really learn about who they are before they have this identity as mom. So like,
Okay, so what do you think about this? Because parenting has changed and it has evolved. Now, I don't know how rigid or strict or disciplined or structured your childhood was, but my parents had standards. They weren't,
huh.
they weren't cruel, corporal punishment or anything like that. I got tightened up a couple times in my life, but for the most part, it was psychological warfare. They knew
Mhm.
how to get in there and do that. But then it came the age to my generation, baby boomers. We wanted to be this kinder, gentler parent. We want our children to have everything and not want for nothing. Well, you know what we did? I think we handicapped them in a
Yeah.
way because the world is cruel out there
Yeah.
and they don't want to take out the trash. Some of them, you can't get them to take a shower. And these parents are wanting to be their friend.
Yeah.
How do we coincide, coexist, draw the line, but know that there is a parent hierarchy and then there is a child?
Right. You're right. So I absolutely hear you. And I think that there's a sort of a middle ground there. And ultimately, children need to know that they are accountable for their actions. I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. And as much as you can allow a child to experience natural consequences, the better. Because if you're an authoritarian parent, which is kind of like one extreme, right, where
Right.
you're the authoritarian, then they're going to know that the authority is outside themselves. They might even blindly follow authority because that's what they've learned to do as a child, and they're not going to question adults as an adult, and maybe they're being led down, the wrong path. But they need to experience then natural consequences. Like if I don't do it, like actually let them fail in a
Right.
safe
Right.
environment.
Right. That's
The
my
other
that's
thing,
my motto is
yeah.
life can show you better than I can tell you.
Absolutely. The other thing I like to say to that is that in the moment where there's a breakdown, you have the opportunity to, number one, let that child know that they are safe and that they are loved.
Right.
So there should never be a time when they feel like they're being punished and that there's a separation, right? It's like, first and foremost, I love you. I don't love the behavior that I just witnessed. I want you to know you're loved, you're safe. And then you call them to be capable, right? You call them to that higher level. And then you can deliver that teaching moment that you need to as a parent.
Mhm.
So it's the way you package it. I think that the child needs to feel safe, they need to be loved. That's the kinder, gentler part. That's the emotional connection part. But you don't leave off the part about personal responsibility. And
Right.
then there's a way, again, like I said, like through natural consequences, giving them the opportunity to fail in a safe space where you can create that sort of crucible
Right.
for learning that's always like they must never feel like they're not safe when they're
Right.
with you. That's a must.
And children want discipline. I mean, again,
They do,
and they
yes.
want, well,
And structure.
yeah, structure. That's a better word. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily, discipline, but you've got to look at the outside influences. You, they're not going very far to find it.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's not like, you're going out, stranger danger, you're trying to cross the street, learn how to ride your bike for the first time. It's in the schools, it's on this device, it's social media. It has changed. So, as parents, we need to evolve with the times. Again, we can't go back to how it was when we were latchkey kids. You come home, you do your homework, you have a sandwich, you get to watch some cartoons for a minute, get on that homework, take a shower, go to bed, and the routine starts the same way the next day. That's not how it is right now. You got these screen kids. Some of them, a lot of them are being homeschooled. And when they're being homeschooled, there's a social aspect of that. That's not always something that they're deprived of. Some parents do great. A friend of mine is taking her kid whole gap year around the country in an RV. That's a different experience. But then you
Yep.
have some that are isolating, and that's hard for the mother too, because there's no engagement with an adult conversation. And they need that. They need to be able to offboard this anxiety. So working with someone like Kathi is just stellar because she understands, she's been there, she's done that, she's seen it from different perspectives. She's had her own personal journey, birthing. She's had a situation where she was adopted, had to face that. Did you ever connect with your biological mother?
I don't even know if my biological mother survived. So my adoption was a closed. It was once I got a chance to talk to my mom,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which I finally did. Um, she said that my birth mother was very distraught. So I know that it was very toxic when I was in the womb. And I was actually born at 6 months gestation. So I was
Wow.
extremely premature. And I was an orphan. I mean, I immediately went into the orphanage. Now, that may have been because my mom was either not, she tried to do a home abortion on me.
Mm,
So I
mm,
don't know if I was taken away from her or what, or
right.
if she didn't survive. I don't have any information on that. But yes, I had an extremely traumatic
But,
birth,
but I mean, but you are
extremely traumatic.
here now to tell the tale. Tell us a little bit about your upcoming program in the book.
Yes, so first, the book is called You Made It Up, Now Stop Believing It.
So, Kathi, I'm so excited about your book. You made it up. Now stop believing it. That is a copy of it. Tell us what's inside the pages of the book.
Sure. So I started out with part one being how you made it up. Part two is how to stop believing it. And part three is about living consciously.
Mm,
So in part one, I took 5 of the case studies that David had recorded. So David had so many case studies. He did a great job of collecting a lot of information. And I turned these case studies into stories where the reader can learn how childhood vows, these core beliefs, also known as childhood vows, showed up in their lives as adults and what was their background, why what was going on in their childhood to set these up, why these vows came to be, and then specifically what the vows were, and then how their life changed after doing the work on themselves. And within these chapters, I'm also explaining how we make it up. So it's about this period of time. It talks about the birth trauma, and I weave it in through these stories, through dialogue, so that it's immersive, right, and hopefully interesting to the reader. And then part two is the entire body memory process that David had created for both the discovery and the release of these vows. And then I talk at the end about the importance of living consciously,
Mm.
and so that we don't, so when we do that, if we clear ourselves of these beliefs from childhood, then just being aware of our language and our thoughts and what we're creating for ourselves now as adults.
But aren't beliefs reality? Aren't they the truth? To it.
Yeah,
Well,
they,
I don't know. You're walking a fine line on that because sometimes we exacerbate it or we overemphasize it, overthink it. So we make these stories a little bit more intense because again, nobody's colored in the white space.
yeah.
But
Uh,
once you come to the reality of this is who you are, this is okay. I was a child that grew up in an orphanage and I was adopted, but I was loved, and this, that, and the other. Okay, so now what do I do with all of this information? That's where you come in, is to really help people, file the nail and say, let's smooth out the rough edges on this because this is true. A lot of times people will go through talk therapy 10, 15 years, never finding a resolution, but still talking about the same traumatic events.
Well, because they're re-traumatizing themselves every time they talk about it.
Hmm.
They're not really releasing the energy. The body memory process actually releases David used to talk about emptying the cup. There's no story about the master teacher who was pouring a cup of tea for this would-be student,
Hmm.
and the tea was flowing over the cup, and he said, "Master, what are you doing? My cup is overflowing." And he said, "So is your mind. I can't teach you anything,"
Mm.
because the student was talking about all the things that he knew. So you can't put something in until you take out what's in there. And because this trauma, as Dr. Pert explained in her work, is we're carrying it in our cell memory. And so the
Hmm.
process is designed to be able to release this from the cells, and then we put in something new. So we're working with letting go of what isn't serving us anymore, and we're putting in the new, like, okay, how about, through affirmations and just knowing, being clear on what do I want from my life now, instead of
Right.
living according to this subconscious script from when I was a child.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So tell us a little bit about your program and how we can get in contact with you.
Yes, so I do want to talk about, periodically I do a master class, and I believe that you'll have access to a link in the notes for my next one, where I talk to moms for about an hour and a half about what we've been talking about here, about triggers and patterns and emotional connection. And if you go to my website, kathysohn.com, that's KATHISOHN.com, you can read a lot about my work. There's a lot of information about my book. You can look at programs and find out more information about the program and how to become involved in my work.
Well, I can never conclude an interview without asking you some fun facts. How about that?
Okay.
You said that you spent some time uh, with the Department of Defense and the military. What was some of your when you look back on it, your greatest accomplishments? Was it being a trailblazer, as a woman in this industry? Did you make a difference? Uh, Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think what really stands out to me is the opportunities that I had, because I was taking those opportunities. I sought out that I'd love to be in the middle of the action. So I had assignments like the White House. I had liaison assignments. A lot of times that was the type of work I was doing. And what really stands out the most is my time in 3 different war zones.
Wow.
So I was in Sarajevo not too long after the Balkan War. I was in Iraq 3 times, just for about a couple of weeks at a time, because I was the manager of a mission over there that I was managing from headquarters. But I went over to be where my team was, because I didn't want to send them any place I wouldn't go. And then I also spent 6 months in Afghanistan when my daughter was 2.
Wow.
And I had a wonderful husband who had a military, he came from a military family. I think everybody, if it wasn't for his lungs, he would have been in the military too.
Wow.
So he understood mission and he took care of the kids while I was there. Luckily, I was able to be on FaceTime with them and see them, but
And
it was a long
that's a different
process.
type of mothering experience too, because society, says XYZ,
Hmm.
and they grew up fully functional. Fathers can do it just as well as
Oh,
mothers can.
yes. Yeah.
And it just depends on how the families are built, because families now are built by design. We've said that over and over again. It's not the traditional way that we have been brought up. The church brought us up. The family norms, the society norms. Things are evolving. They're ever changing. What would you tell a young mother right now that's just kind of struggling?
Oh, just to turn within for the answers. I think that so many times when we get caught in struggles, it's easy to blame something that's going on out there, that it's because of the economy or because of some other person, or my mother-in-law, whoever,
Right, right.
something outside yourself. But just to know that um, I'm a woman of faith, so I would say that if you are a person of faith, to really, really turn in that direction and turn inward for that connection, and also turn inward to do like we've been talking about today, to find the answers, whether it's my program or other, if someone else's, that's where the answers are, and that you don't have to struggle.
Right.
You,
And you're not
you,
alone.
you really don't. And you're not alone. Absolutely. Yes.
So, what do you do for fun and recreation, Kathi?
Well, I'd love to spend time with my kids, just,
Mm,
taking them places. I'm very active. I do yoga, and, I go to my classes every week, and I love to walk. Um,
good.
and cook, and I have a son on the autism spectrum, and so just really spending time with him and helping him along. I have piano in my background, so I help him. He's been learning the piano, like, through me and another teacher online, and it's one of his superpowers.
I,
It's
you
so
know, and
exciting.
I tell people, with all of the people that are neurodivergent now, it is a different, it's an evolution of a different species, is what
You
I
bet.
believe.
I do
Is what
too.
I
I think they're
believe.
here for a reason.
That's right. That they are, they're trapped in this different world, and they will emerge through arts, through music, through science. I was talking to some young boy, and he was on the autism spectrum, and his mother kept trying to shush him. Oh, no, no, don't say that to Miss April. He was talking to me about dinosaurs. He knew everything about a cotton picking dinosaur, because I was
Yeah.
in Ireland looking for Nessie, Loch Ness, and he was saying, "Oh, that's a myth, Miss April." And he was going on and on and on. I was really intrigued. We just have to figure out how to open that door, that cycle breaker pathway. We have to figure it out. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to say one thing about Ben that's so amazing. You can say he'll hear a note, like if you sing a note, he'll tell you what it is without even look. Or if you hit a note on the piano, he'll tell you what note that is, and it doesn't matter what octave it's in.
No,
He's right every single time.
of course, of course. It's something different. It's
Oh
too
yeah,
it's too much going on. And now you're seeing a lot of parents realizing that they have these same traits, they have this same ability, disability, challenge, however you want to frame it. But they didn't realize that until their child got diagnosed. And when their child
right.
got diagnosed, they're going like, wow, so now I understand why I couldn't stay focused, or why I would have, trouble connecting with people growing up. Now I see why. So again, don't judge a book by its cover. You got to open it up and look at the pages. And let me ask you a question in the end. If you were an appliance, Kathi, in the kitchen, what appliance would you be, and why?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think I would be my my cappuccino maker.
Ah, you like a little cappuccino? Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah. Yes. So energy in the morning, energy in the morning. Yes.
That's right. Well, that energy is going to carry you through and a lot of mothers that you are helping with their teens. And I thank you so much for dedicating your life in the service, in the Department of Defense, because we need people like you back there now. And also, being a strong mother, you know, uh, dealing through your grief, working through your grief, but still carrying David's legacy. So I give you your flowers today. Brains, go in, love, like, share, and subscribe. We're going to get Kathy's information here. Cycle Breaker Pathway. We want you to go in, take a look, join her class. If you are struggling, you're not alone. There's 8 billion people on the planet. Okay. And so there's a lot of people going through this, but you are alone if you don't open your mouth and ask for help. And there's no shame associated with asking for help. It can just be between you and Kathy or you and a therapist or whatever. Everybody doesn't have to know your business. You don't have to put it all out on social media because they're not the best therapists. Okay. They can be very judgmental, they can be very cruel. Get somewhere in a quiet, safe space, someone that is going to love you intimately and not judge you. Okay. Kathy, thank you so much for being on the edge with me. You are a shining star. You are a big cup of cappuccino.